Hello, and welcome, once again, to Frankly, Why Are You Here? Today I'm here to talk to you about why life is full of mysterious mysteries that can never be solved. Mysterious mysteries that can never be solved. Modern life is full of mysteries, such as, why do I still have a job? And why does Walter wear those glasses that make him look like a young Jeffrey Dahmer? Aside from those disturbing questions, today I'm going to look at one of life's modern mysteries. I'm going to ask whether it's reasonable for us to consider that we've been ruled by a death cult. Before I get on to that cheerful subject, I'm going to explain to you how I'm going to do it. I'm going to use two major concepts. One is a concept I've talked about before called the state religion. Two, which is a factor of this state religion, conspiracy theories. It will become apparent why these two things are related to the mysterious mysteries of our time. It's important to remember one big idea. We are living through the end of the 20th century. Now, I know it's been a while since the 20th century ended in numbers, but in terms of how its power was created, you are living through its disintegration. Imagine, if you will, that the 20th century was one long series of adverts. And these adverts placed a sort of voiceover in your head. If you consider that this was how the power of liberal democracy was cemented, broadcasted, and secured into people's minds, then what I'm about to say to you will make a lot more sense. Because today, one of the reasons why our civilization has been replaced with an almost mandatory madness is because these adverts are what people consider to be reality, and that voiceover in their head is what tells them what to think, how to feel, how to value things morally, which things to believe in, and which things not. There are many interesting facets of 20th century history. Most of them are described in some way as a conspiracy theory. What's the theory of the conspiracy theory, I might wonder? In brief, a conspiracy theory is something that usually has the explanatory power to challenge the state religion. What is the state religion, you might ask? Every state has them, and you'll notice them in your terms and conditions, your flat pack furniture, the rules and regulations you must obey in your workplace and online, and so on. These are everywhere, and when something is everywhere, it means that an ideology has become victorious. So, the ideological victory of the liberal project was to make its rules seem the same as reality, and you can't escape them. Now, these are dissolving, happily, which also accounts for a lot of the madness in the world. In the previous video, I explained that your current thing movements, the crazes promoted by the state religion, collectively can be understood as a form of mad pride. It's a war on sanity and reality, of course. The reason you hear the phrase conspiracy theory applied to so many things which aren't supposed to happen, which keep happening anyway, is because that the patterns you notice contradict the official beliefs that you're supposed to believe according to the state and who rules it. That is the state religion. You are obliged to believe these things. The mass culture that's produced for you to consume broadcasts these things into your head, and if you question them, then you are a conspiracy theorist. So today, on my new mini-series, Mysterious Mysteries, Mysterious Mysteries that can never be solved. And today the mysterious mystery that I'm going to try and solve is, why do people think we live in a death cult? You might be aware of an island that I live on, Foggy Island. It's mainly an archipelago, really, but, you know, for the sake of argument, it's Britain. There's the island of Ireland, there's Northern Ireland on it, There's Scotland, Wales and England. I live in the England bit, since I emigrated to England from London. Recently, around June, the conservative Christian commentator Peter Hitchens suggested that we live in a death cult. He said this because the government had taken steps to legalise abortion up to birth and, as if that weren't enough, to move towards promoting suicide as a healthy option for the elderly and disabled. It calls this assisted dying. And even the catastrophic failure in person that was Theresa May, our former Prime Minister, even she stood up and said, suicide is bad, and this tells people it is good. So we can see that there are some rays of light, of moral clarity, peeking through the wizard's curtain of liberal democracy at last. Obviously, as a religious extremist, I will tell you that the reason that those rays of light are appearing is because increasing numbers of people within and without the political establishment are realising that the state we are in is a direct result of the defection from Christ, from Christianity, and has been forewarned by the Catholic social teachings of the Catholic Church between about 1880 and 1891. If you care to look it up, I write about that regularly on my inevitable Substack. But it's not just Peter Hitchens who's noticed that we might be living in a death cult. Now, for many years, this has been put across as a conspiracy theory. If you say things like that, you must be insane. I would like to remind you that every time this is applied, it is because the explanatory power of the so-called conspiracy theory is dangerous to the state religion. The state religion is composed of beliefs which the ruling elite push upon you, advertise to you, put into your mind as little voiceovers to make you do what they want. It is in their interests, not yours, that you follow the state religion of liberal globalism. And what might that be, we ask? Is there any truth that we're living in a death cult? Is this a baseless conspiracy theory? Earlier this week, an announcement was made by a Labour peer. That's a lord. We used to have real lords, but now we have people appointed by political parties to the higher chamber who can make speeches like this. This was Lord Brooke, and he said the quiet part out loud.
This century's growth in the world population from 6.1 billion to 8.2 billion, a 25% increase in 25 years. But just think what the 2025 numbers would be if abortion had not been legalized, or there had not been wide-scale usage and advocacy of contraception. And indeed, the growth of homosexuality throughout society has reduced the number of children we would have had the churches had their way. We would have had a very much bigger population than we presently have, facing the difficulties we have with climate change.
What Lord Brooke was going on about was that change was a great thing, because he's a progressive, of course. And here we have another element of the state religion. Progress and change, always good. Lord Brooke said it was good that the churches had changed. Why was that good? What changes was he talking about? He said that the fact the global population was low was a good thing because of climate change. What he's telling you is that the elite, as it were, the state religion of the elite, is telling you that fewer people is better. What did he say had changed to promote this? He said global population had been limited in its increase by the widespread acceptance of homosexuality in society, by the widespread acceptance and use of contraception, such as the hormone-disrupting birth control pill and the over-the-counter abortifacients you can now get. He also said that the decriminalisation and permission of abortion was another reason that we didn't have many more humans ruining the climate. He said also, if the churches had had their way, there'd be many more people on Earth. Bear in mind that you will read, if you stare into Satan's window, many mysterious musings about the mysterious mystery of the collapse of populations in the Western world. This is a crisis, we are told, but it seems to have no cause. It is a mysterious mystery. As you may by now be unfortunately aware, I do write about foreign affairs and politics and political theory, and I do a bit of that in my spare time, because my life is a sad, barren, howling desert. A featureless horizon, if you like. Yes, it's all rock and roll in the shed. What's this got to do with anything? Well, people sometimes ask me, very well, I can see that the Empire of Lies promotes and marches under the rainbow flag. Why is the faking gay empire gay? We know it's fake. Why is it gay? Why does everything have to be gay? Why does it promote homosexuality? Why is the rainbow flag and the trans flag everywhere? Why is the Vatican welcoming the rainbow movement through its doors? Why is it so prevalent in organisations such as NATO and online social media platforms and liberal governments? Why is it promoted throughout our corporations? Why is everything gay? Well, I think if you look at this element of the state religion, that fewer humans is good. It answers your question. Lord Brooke's speech answers your question. It's good because people in those lifestyles cannot reproduce naturally. This also leads us on to one of Tesla's many predicted man-made horrors beyond your comprehension. The incidence and growing multi-billion-dollar market of surrogacy for the socially infertile. One element of the state religion is that one defining feature, if you like, is that it doesn't tell you the facts. It always conceals them in happy euphemisms. When you hear the phrase, for the climate, just think of your people vanishing from the earth. If they told you that out loud, you'd be ungovernable, wouldn't you? But if it's for the climate, good. This is a good thing. We're doing it for the planet. It's an altruistic reason. Similarly, surrogacy is promoted as an altruistic service. And right now, in the United Kingdom, in Australia and elsewhere, campaigners are trying to open the surrogacy market even more. And they're using the phrase social infertility to do so. They also advance the human right to a family. This is another case of where human rights are advanced to do wrongs. See how this works. If you're opposed to liberalising the criminal sale of babies, and it is a crime to sell babies, to anyone, regardless of their background, including if they have committed the most heinous crimes against children, if you support this on the basis of the truth, you'll be supporting something that's openly obscene and evil. However, if you're told that surrogacy is an altruistic service that permits everyone to enjoy the joy of a family, that they have a human right to a family, and that there is a barrier to that, you're not opposed to people's right to a family, are you? And you can see how that works. Social infertility is a bracket term, a euphemism that includes men who can't have babies. That means homosexual men and men who think they're women. Social infertility is the reason given in leading Western nations for further liberalising the sale of babies through the rental of women and the reduction of human life to a transaction and a consumer product. This is the truth of the business. I wonder why they never say that part out loud. So you can see that part of the solution to the collapsing population is to use an horrific crime against God to allow people to buy babies for their own enjoyment. But apart from that, is there anything more to this death cult business? What's the solution proposed by the ruling elite, as it were, to the collapsing population that they've caused? Well, the Great Replacement has been termed a dangerous conspiracy theory put across by extremist cranks. Now, whenever I hear that phrase, I think it must be of immediate explanatory power. If you look on the internet again and just search for the terms United Nations replacement migration, you can see that it's actually a policy published by the United Nations. The idea being, and it says in the opening paragraph, that collapsing populations in the West require replacement and that migration is the best way to do it. Who would have thought it? At the same time that this is an active and open policy, to describe it honestly is slandered as a conspiracy theory. The lesson here, ladies, gentlemen, and children of all ages, is that if you notice reality out loud, they will call you a dangerous nutter. This is not a fact-based argument. This brings me back to a point that I'd made before, right? If you think that you're going to win with facts and logic, then you're fighting the wrong battle. If you cite these people's own words back to them, they will still call you a dangerous conspiracy theorist, and when you get angry about that fact, they'll point to you being angry and say you're insane and need to be locked up. It's not a conversation. You can't win with facts and logic, but you can notice patterns and potentially have your life destroyed for doing so. Which brings us again to the mysterious mystery of why I still have A, a life, and B, a job. Perhaps that will be solved in future. I don't care, by the way. You could probably tell. I think we have a duty to investigate the truth because that's what God wants us to do. And I believe that God is where the truth is because he is the source of truth ultimately. And to seek it is, of course, to seek him. The same can be said about beauty and justice and order. All the good things in life flow from God. If you dutifully and sincerely pursue them, that is where you will end up. Consider why, then, we are ruled by an advert for evil that tells you that going insane is a moral imperative. It's not directing you towards the truth or to justice or to reality or to God, is it? No. It's not. It's explicitly anti-Christian. And it vaunts over the fact it celebrates the vanquishing of the teachings of the church. To go further down the death cult rabbit hole, i.e. the death of Western nations, there was a future summit in 2024 held by the United Nations, in which it asserted a nice, marketable euphemism for illegal mass migration, and also recommended it as a sort of human right. That's right. It prefers the term irregular migration. If you've tried to go on holiday recently, you can see how joyous it is to attempt to cross a border. I'll shortly have to do so myself, and I'm not going to bring any digital devices with me because there is a chance that I'll be arrested for saying things like this. This routinely happens in the Britain. I don't think I'm special for getting that treatment, but I might do. And so precautions are advised. This is the world we live in. If you challenge the explanatory power of the head movies of liberal democracy that we're all supposed to dance to, we're supposed to cry on cue, and we're supposed to rage, and we're supposed to bellow with laughter and delight and look with optimism at a future in which we own nothing and we're happy. If you challenge those credibly, then you're a threat to power, simply because the ultimate fact about this system is it rules by media. And so that's why censorship and so on is so important. But it's not just online censorship. Calling people conspiracy theorists, dangerous lunatics, and so on for noticing obvious reality is a way of censoring reality itself.
Guns don't kill people, the government does. This sex ed stuff goes higher than the schools. It's that same old Club of Rome zero population bulldink that the UN's been trying for years. You just be careful. Computers have already beaten the communists at chess. Next thing you know, they'll be beating humans.
You do this by attaching a stigma to people, saying, no, you shouldn't listen to people like that in real life. If you hear them talking at work or in the pub or in the street, then you should shun them because they're dangerous extremists, they're lunatics, they believe in all these terrible things. A further dimension to this is the fact that if things are bad in the world, if it is indeed true that the people who lead you and who you trust have in fact betrayed you profoundly and are wicked, then it's almost too much to bear. This is one way in which evil is permissioned. You might recognise this problem from your own life. If you try and pick one of the many evils of the modern world and explain it to someone on the basis of facts and recorded reality, you may be astonished to find that they simply get angry and attack you. That's because they've invested their beliefs, a part of their personality perhaps, their sense of meaning and purpose in life, in something that's now known to be false. The result is not that they're going to be enlightened and thank you for it. That is vanishingly rare. More commonly, people see this as an attack upon themselves because those beliefs have been infused into their idea of their own being. This is who they are. What they believe animates them. If you undermine those beliefs, you undermine them. It's perceived as an existential attack. This is one of the reasons why rule by media is so effective, because you can broadcast serious segments of people's personalities directly into their minds, and they will absorb them as if they really are who they are. How and why does this work? If you come back to the cheerful question of whether we live in a death cult, then you have to consider what's going on in that cult. Lord Brooke has blurted out the fact that the rainbow movement generally is seen as a good thing because those people seldom have babies. It's best not to think of when they do. I've spent weeks researching this. It is not lol. That's why that's a good thing for them. And so is contraception, apparently. Now, what do they have in common? The trans movement and oral contraception are movements which involve the habitual or heavy use of hormone disruptors. Hormone disruptors disrupt your hormones. That's how they prevent you getting pregnant. That's how you can sell them to people as gender-changing chemicals. But what hormones really do when they're disrupted is they make you think you're not yourself anymore. You think you've changed. You might not even notice it, but it changes the way you think about yourself, the way you think about reality, your tastes, your moods, everything. Hormone disruptors change who you think you are. If you end up in a state of profound chemically induced confusion, then you are much more liable to believe things broadcasted directly into your head because you won't have the mental stability or courage or even sometimes the memory to withstand this. It makes you less circumspect. It drives you out of your mind. You don't know what to believe anymore, so you will largely shut down and simply refer to so-called trusted sources. Those trusted sources are broadcasting the state religion into your head and telling you anyone who notices anything disturbing about the program is a lunatic.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish things are true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Hormone disruptors include so-called antidepressants, which don't actually make you undepressed. They simply cancel your mind. They make you blank. In fact, they increase suicidal thoughts. What was that about a death cult again? It's unknown how many people are actually on mind-altering drugs prescribed by the state and permissioned by the state. There are significant reasons why people become mentally ill, and quite a lot of that is to do with the fact that they're told lies about the world, and the resulting tension drives them mad, and they realise there are profound social and career and personal penalties for questioning the official narrative. It's unsurprising then, millions and millions of people take antidepressants. Added to that, the number of women who take abortifacient contraceptive pills, and also then the growing tribe of the transsane, who do so for different reasons, because it secures their belief that they've become someone else. Mentally speaking, they have. The drugs do work. They don't change your sex, but they change who you think you are. You could argue, and I do, that the death cult isn't just about killing people, or rather removing numbers of humans before they're born and sterilising them and teaching them to pursue lifestyles that don't produce children. It's not just about population, it's about the death of the mind and the spirit as well. If you like, the extinction of the recognition that man has a soul and a higher purpose in life than gratifying his urges through shopping and fornicating. If you just talk to people about that, they're shocked. Is there a higher purpose than circulating the superstore car park looking for a space? Well, no, that's mankind's most urgent spiritual quest today, it seems. Maybe Ballard's remark, because it was J.G. Ballard who said that, the English writer, maybe his remark has been superseded by the online search for cheaper gender transition hormones. But you get the general idea. Is there more to life than shopping and rutting? Yes, there is. That's a dangerous proposition to put, because it's heretical to the state religion. The state religion is explicitly anti-Christian for one reason. The power of the Catholic Church to explain reality is superior and peerless. If you look into the Catholic social teaching, you'll find in it a luminous body of wisdom that provides the closest correspondence to the facts of life, spiritually and practically, mentally and physically, than any other body of work. That's why it has to be destroyed, discredited, and replaced with the same modernist rubbish that you see everywhere else. If you think that's a bit harsh, consider what the explanatory power is of the modern church, not just the Catholic Church, but all of them. Do they really help you to live your life in a better way? Do they really explain the higher spiritual purpose of mankind? Do they give you practical wisdom to apply to the ruling of the state, the rejection of the false gods of modernism, and to clean up your mind? Do they teach you to practice mental hygiene? If they don't, they're no good, and they're preaching the state religion of liberal globalism. I talk a lot about the rule by an elite. You hear that a lot too. Is that just a conspiracy theory? Is that a mysterious mystery that can never be solved? Mysterious? Because I'm a sad character who dresses up to sit on a bench in a shed next to a skeleton, I've read books. As we all know, reading is for
nice people.
One of the things I read was a mid-century account of Sir Isaiah Berlin, right? He was a liberal. He was a Jewish immigrant from Russia. His family left Russia at the time of the Bolshevik Revolution and came to England. Now, Isaiah Berlin taught at Oxford. He's a very clever man and is probably the best explainer of liberalism, if you like, liberal explainer and number one liberal appreciator of the 20th century. If anyone cares, he was the teacher of John Gray, who's still alive now and is, without question, the world's leading critic of the liberal idea. A genuine intellectual, if you wish to find one. Isaiah Berlin said there was two types of liberalism. One is the one that he liked, the other one, the one that we got. The first one, he said, was value pluralism. Liberalism was the best system because it tolerated plural values. It had an open debate, Charlie Kirk had an open debate, about which was the best system and which values were superior. And so through this vigorous investigation of the possibilities, the liberal system would produce the best ideas in history. Have a look around you, right? Do you really think the state we're in is the product of the best ideas in history? That is what the state religion will tell you we have. That's why a lot of liberals can't believe people don't like liberalism, because some of them genuinely believe that that's how we live and why we have the values we have. That the sick, depraved, satanic values of the death cult that rules us, and it is a death cult, are the product of human history in its entirety, that this is the pinnacle of mankind and he can proceed no further than liberalism. That's what they believe, the true believers, in the state religion of global liberalism. The second type of liberalism that Sir Isaiah Berlin expounded was the rule by an elite that he said was nothing better than a despotism or a tyranny. In this second type of liberalism, he said you would get a bunch of people who were in charge of the state, who would tell you what to believe because they said they knew what was best for you. Your elections would be fake. They would simply push these beliefs at you. They would make policies on the basis of their own wisdom and not only ignore public opinion, but shape it through the mass media to generate mass belief or make believe in what the elite wanted people to believe in. This is the system we inhabit today, and Isaiah Berlin explained how they both worked. The first one, the good one, was always a fantasy. The second one, the very, very bad one, was always the reality. People are beginning to realise that we are ruled by a despotic or tyrannical elite that does what it wants and tells everyone that it's good for you when in fact the opposite is true. This is the reason why life is full of mysterious mysteries that can never be solved. The reason why you're called names if you notice obvious patterns, such as, doesn't this look like a death cult? All these things promote destructive behaviours and the reduction of the human population. What could all that be about? The reason why the state religion calls you names and calls you a loony for saying this is because it stigmatises sanity. It realises that if people are sane and they're strong and confident enough to withstand its lies, then it won't be able to keep a hold on power. This is one reason why you ought to remember that you need to be strong if you want to be good. This is the reason why I do deadlifts and certain people I know do not. Seriously though, even if you are weak, you should pick up a kettlebell and try working out with that. You don't have to go to the gym. You should lift weights. Kettlebell's good. Barbell, in my view, better. You should get strong. It makes you more fearless. It gives you mental discipline. It teaches you a different relationship to pain. In short, you can't be virtuous unless you're resilient, and that comes from being tough, mentally and physically. You'll sleep better too. Anyway, apart from that, what I'm on about is the fact that sanity has been stigmatised by the system that rules us. And if you notice how wicked it is and precisely why it's doing what it's doing, they'll call you insane and try to ruin your life and try and make you untouchable, a pariah, an outcast. How do you tell the difference between genuine nutters and nutters like me? Not everyone is sane. Some people are barking mad. The explanations that best match reality are true, right? And the point of the investigation of the truth is to try and find the best explanations that fit reality. Now, most of the explanations that best fit reality, especially the 20th century, are branded as conspiracy theories. This tells you more about how you are ruled than the truth value of these explanations. Again, you're ruled by a bunch of pleasant euphemisms as well. They never tell you the truth exactly. They'll tell you things like social infertility, like irregular migration. They'll talk about human rights, whilst each of these causes seems to advance grave moral wrongs. They'll tell you that love is love. No one tells you that water is water and instructs you to drink out of the toilet. As you may not be aware, we are in the midst of a war on our entire civilization, and it's important to consider how you can soldier on without going mad. Apropos that, I'm going to recommend the following anecdote from my life. I was bringing my children up because I did not want to hand them into the indoctrination system known as school. And so I used to go down to the local park and play in the stream with them when they were very small. One of them was 1 and the other was 4, and they would toddle about and we'd play charmingly. It was wonderful. And I took to wearing this wig whilst I did so. This is a wig that I found on a London bus in an area populated by people of African origin. And I found the wig on the bus one night, and I believe it was the voice of the Lord himself that spoke unto me, as it were like a ringing bell, and said, pick up that wig and put it on. And who am I to disagree? And so I did. Ever since then, I've been wearing it at opportune moments. Such a moment befell me around 4 years ago. I was in the park wearing the wig on a sunny day playing in the stream, and I was doing so because the wig functions as a sort of litmus test. A litmus test is a chemical test using special paper that shows you whether something is acid or alkaline. This is a social litmus test to see whether you are insane or not. I did say to you that there are practical ways to discern whether someone is mad or not, and wearing a black woman's wig in public is one of them. People who are not strangers to reason immediately found this funny. They smirked, they laughed, sometimes they made comments. That was fun. I had increased the quotient of amusement in the world by encouraging the general public to point and laugh at me. Some people don't think it's funny. This particular woman came up to me and hesitantly touched me on the elbow. And she told me it was very brave, that I was very brave. And she looked at me with that sort of faux sincerity squint that they have. And I knew that I'd hooked a whopper. I knew that a catch was about to be landed, and I managed to calm myself using all my martial discipline, and I did not betray my delight at this moment. Instead, I said, "Ah, yes, thank you." And she said, "Are these your..." And she signed with her hand at my infant children. And I said, yes, they are. That's my daughter. And that's my son. He's 4. And she went, oh yes. And how do they? I said, oh no, they've, very well. It's going very well. It's very well. Yeah. And she just went, lovely. And then I indicated my son and said, well, of course, he and I are to be married, but only when he's 8, bit young now. And she looked at me with an expression of barely suppressed astonishment. Her eyes widened. She suppressed the urge to recoil. You could see her going back in the shock. But she pushed herself back into my presence, and her face settled into an expression of forced approbation. She was beginning to realise that she'd just been given a story that she could pass on to her genderflux basket weaving network when they next meet in the lesbian cafe. And she said to me, oh yeah. And I said, because, of course, love is love. And I looked at my son, who was 4 years old, and I suppressed the urge to say, well, of course, Stephen Fry married his grandson, didn't he? Which is not strictly true, of course. That's a conspiracy theory. Stephen Fry married someone else's grandson. Is there something that's killing reason, killing people's capacity for rational behaviour, that's disrupting their bodies with chemicals, that's disrupting their minds with a sort of stigmatisation of the sane? And it's promoting policies that say it's the highest virtue to reduce the human population by practically any means available to policy. Could you call that a death cult? Well, members of the British establishment are now, and I think it's fair to say that such a time betokens the fact that we are indeed living in the end of the long 20th century, and people are no longer buying what its adverts are selling, and they're beginning to notice that the voice in their head isn't theirs. And despite its promises, what it's telling you isn't good. All of the so-called conspiracy theories are interesting for this reason. You look at the spectacular rise and fall of the cult of George Floyd, and what happened to all that money, I wonder? The way that the Ukraine war was popularised, and how so many flags appeared. If you reject the idea that men can ever be women, then you're labelled as someone who is participating in genocide. If you look at the JFK assassination at September the 11th or the Iraq War is a good one. It was a war on terror, of course. Part of the war on terror. How much terror has that exported into your nation? Interesting. You could almost say that that's an industry of death, couldn't you? But that would be a conspiracy theory, of course. And so would be the fact that enormous amounts of money are washed around in all these events. All the mass-scale events, like the lockdowns, like the wars, like the transgender industry. There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of sponsorship, such as the human trafficking industry that's grown up after the permissioning of irregular migration to replace your declining populations, which have vanished for some mysterious mystery. Why are people not having babies anymore? I don't know. It's a mysterious mystery. Can you afford to live in a house? Oh no, but that's got nothing to do with it. And what about all those chemicals? People, no, nothing to see here. And what's that flag? Why are you like, oh, it's fine, I've got a new lifestyle. It doesn't involve having children. I see, nothing to see here. You can call it a death cult if you like. But one thing that's important to note is that all the crazes, all the causes that are pushed as progressive, all of them, that demand change to the Christian norms we inherited from our once Christian civilization, all those changes are destructive. They're self-destructive. They're destructive to the human population, to your mental health, to your physical well-being, and to the very concept of reality itself. One thing that's really quite odd, if you notice it, is how they seem to be inspired by a form of spite or vengeance. How they're often accompanied by the release of anger towards a targeted group by public acts of fiery and mostly peaceful protest, actual violence, the permissioning of murder through voodoo curses, and so on. And of course, the peak victimhood of the trans cult, which basically says that if you mutilate yourself in this way and you pollute yourself with these terrible drugs, then you'll gain enormous cachet and power and you'll be legally and socially untouchable for whatever you choose to do. And it permissions you to behave abominably. These can be understood as an act of vengeance on women generally. And the other movements too, an act of vengeance on normal people generally. If you look at it that way, it's really quite revealing. And this is what people mean when they say, if you defect from Christ, you inevitably get evil. As Rerum Novarum and other encyclicals predicted, any state that promotes these false gods of liberation, progressive change, universal equality, that promises you a paradise on earth through progressive policy, they're nihilist cults. They're taking everything from you and supplying nothing in its place. They leave you with an empty life. And this is why your state descends into chaos and suffers a total moral collapse, as Pope Leo XIII predicted. Incidentally, this week, I found out that there was a cat that went around the Vatican and had superior permission to anyone else in the Vatican during the papacy of Pope Leo XIII. I think it was called Michello. I haven't looked that up. I might be wrong. But the bloke who put it up on the internet had a picture of a cat in a mitre. And I couldn't help but ask him, is that picture legit? The cat, I'm sure, was real, but did it wear a hat? I insisted that it was, and you know what? I prefer to believe it now. I prefer to believe that a cat wandered around the Vatican wearing a mitre in the 1880s and no one dared say anything to it. It was a delightful fact to find out. So apparently there was a cat and it could do what it pleased. And I prefer to believe that it wore a magnificent hat. I've thought about doing a series called Mysterious Mysteries That Can Never Be Solved, but I realised pretty quickly that if I did that and I honestly investigated all of them, I would become one of them. You can see that there is a risk to being sane in public or, you know, on the internet, that it does carry a risk. It does endanger you. This evil is real, and that's the case. I think we can agree, hopefully, that there is sufficient evidence to suggest that the mysterious mystery of whether we are ruled by a death cult has been solved. There is no need to disturb Sherlock. There is no need for any famous televisual detective to involve himself. Right? The mysterious mysteries are there to deflect you from looking into how the machine operates, how you're ruled, what it tells you to do, and why you shouldn't listen to it. And those are basically the reasons why any superior explanation will be marked out for destruction. That's why they're trying to get rid of Christianity and anything else that has any superior explanatory power. This is why your culture is channeled into safe packaged products that don't overturn the general idea, which is that you are going to be told what to do, think, believe, act, and indeed when to live and die by people who have your best interests at heart. Before you get miserable about this, I'm not a doomer. This system is completely unsustainable. It is dissolving, as I keep reminding you. Your duty is to not disintegrate along with it, right? This can and does drive people mad. It drives them mad with rage. How could they do this? It drives them mad with despair. Oh no, there are so many people captured by this. What are we going to do? All this stuff takes money and it takes power. And every day that money and that power is shrinking. And people have simply had enough of being told that they're going to live in an earthly paradise when in fact everything gets worse at an alarming rate every single day. And so it's not working anymore. The adverts are not powerful enough to contradict reality. Yes, all these things have been happening, but no, I do not think they will continue to happen. The people whose entire careers have been invested in this, whose decades of policy have been aiming towards the victory of the death cult, are not going to let go without a squabble. But they have far less power than they did even a few years ago. Whether that power will be transferred to a superior system, morally speaking, remains to be seen, but the signs are at least encouraging, in parts, like the curate's egg. It's not all bad. There is a potential future within our grasp where we have a return to sanity and where we are not obliged to go mad in order to follow the state religion. In fact, it's quite possible that you may see the true religion return to the state religion, because that can happen as well. Again, after a century of the forced conscription of the populations of the West into the worship of false idols and the state religion, perhaps it's time to give the true religion a go for a change. Why does no one tell you that, eh? It certainly gets the noggin jogging. I apologise for making you think. You can see what it's done to me. I've turned up today wearing this because it's getting chilly in the shed and no one cares, of course. If you'd like to tell me what you think about my hair, about Walter's startling resemblance to a young Jeffrey Dahmer, if you'd like me to answer anything on the question of any of the mysterious mysteries in life, then do please use Walter's feedback mechanism. Obviously, he's invented this just to torment me. And I'm sure it will. But remember, that's also what the internet is for. It's not just about cat pictures, even if they are wearing hats in the Vatican. It's not just about transmitting horrific satanic memes into your head to drive you insane with rage so you are recruited into the destruction of your civilization wholesale. It's also for telling me what you think about me and what I go on about. And I suggest you make use of it, because there's no means yet of providing the kind of feedback that my face richly deserves and that would indeed enrich my dentist. Until that moment comes, and I'm sure Walter is working on a feedback face punch mechanism as we speak. Until that glorious moment arrives, you'll have to put up with sending me a voice message. So, do that if you want to. And I promise I will listen to them and respond to them where the subject material does not endanger my life. God bless you all. Remember to seek His grace. And also, you're not obliged to go insane as the liberal system disintegrates. Remember, we want justice, not vengeance. I think we'll get it. But not if we all go crackers.